Hey there, everybody, this is Bob with Trade Genius. Got my good friend Phil here. Yesterday we talked Bitcoin, the asset. Today we're going to talk about the Bitcoin miners and really interesting dynamics here. You're not going to want to miss this because you could pick the wrong miner and go broke, pick the right miner and get rich. Stay tuned.
Trade Genius.
Hey everybody, it's Bob with Trade Genius. Usually I do fun ads. I talk about our service, but I want to be serious with you for a second. We've been helping a lot of people trading for a long time. As you can see here, I want to let them do the talking for me for a change. But most importantly, we want to help you too. If you've not joined our service yet, come check us out, tradelikeagenius.com. Full service. We have a chat room. We have the algorithms for you. We give trades out every day. We educate you. So go to tradelikeagenius.com. Check us out. What you get out of our service is much more than what you put into it, and we'd like to see you in the room. Thanks for listening. Okay, Phil, I'm not easily impressed, but I was absolutely blown away by the cost structures of these companies. And absolutely there's going to be an 80-20 rule in this environment. And I'm going to throw it over to you to explain to people what that means.
Right. Let's just go right into it here. So this is a spreadsheet of the different publicly traded mining companies, at least in the US. And on the left here, we have the average cost to mine column, which is currently what their costs are. Now, this takes into account not only the electrical costs, but overhead, depreciation schedules, things of that nature to get a real true cost to mine one Bitcoin. Then on the right, we have the price that's needed post-halving for these guys to at least break even. Okay. So I don't think a lot of these metrics are that well understood, but it's interesting because the larger miners actually are in some of the worst positions as far as going into the halving. So CLSK, CleanSpark, they got some of the lowest cost to mine. Wolf, another play I like, and I think is for the price is a great risk reward here. And I know we'll go into the charts after this, but they're at 29,000. If you just take a look at those lower numbers that we have here, all the way up to say Mara, basically we have a pretty good idea that we will be trading approaching 100K probably post halving. So you have some breathing room in terms of these names. But where it gets really dicey is you look at the guys that are now, when it gets to post halving, starting with Celsius and MIGI and Cores and Riot, Hut, BTDR. Look at, Riot, which is a fairly substantial company. Their debt structure is pretty good, but they have to have Bitcoin trading at $178,000 post halving to break even. That's a huge problem because unless we go into, supply shock, we're not going to see that at least on a sustained level. So I think when people talking about why are the miners lagging behind the price, I think for a lot of these names it's not a good situation. It's very bearish actually going into the halving, and so you're basically hoping that supply shock does happen and Bitcoin kind of just leaves the atmosphere, leaves the solar system, leaves all the other asset classes behind to make these numbers work. So you have to be very careful, like Bob said, about what names you're going to pick, because I can tell you right now, the bottom half of this list is in a world of hurt. And if you're in those names and you get any kind of relief on a bounce going into the halving or maybe even post halving, some of that blow off move that we see, maybe these numbers are justified for a brief time as Bitcoin's blowing off north of 100K. But I would be very concerned about holding at least the bottom half of this list long term. Funny thing is that the top half of this list, some of these names are very inexpensive. And I think, like I said, have a great risk reward. And these names, you can hold for much longer past halving. Now, even if we get into a 6-figure move into the halving or just beyond the halving, like I was saying yesterday, if we get a broad market blow off move, even these names, they'll be profitable, let's say going into Q4, maybe Q1 of 2025. But even then, you kind of have to start looking at the potential for these names to really be hurting if we go into that recession play. And let's just say Bitcoin, worst case scenario, let's say Bitcoin goes down to 25K. Okay. It's another big 75% drop. These names are going to get destroyed. So I think there's a great opportunity. I think this is very eye-opening, and you have to basically use this as kind of what's the best risk reward or what's the best names to be getting into, because I think timing wise, Bob, and I think your charts are going to reflect this, we're at the foot of a really good move on some of these names, and I'll kick it back over to you to kind of talk about these different charts.
Yeah, and I want to kind of talk about the financial a little bit too, because you'll get an argument from people saying, well, you're showing me the fully burdened cost of the business. Short term actually doesn't matter because they're going to still produce coins if their marginal cost cost is still profitable for them, but at some point in time, the fully burdened cost matters because they have to keep upgrading their equipment, okay? And they have to run their business. And you get to a situation where if they try to run too lean for too long to get a short-term gain, they can find themselves out of business. So these are important numbers to understand from that standpoint. The other thing too that's interesting to me, Phil, before I get to the charts, is that if some of these guys have to shut down because they can't make that marginal nut, that's just going to actually make Bitcoin even more valuable because, even though if Wolf and CLSK, CleanSpark are doing great, well, they have limitations about how big they can be, how fast they can be. Just kind of like, the chip manufacturers. Just because you can make the best chip doesn't mean you can make all the chips, because you have to expand. So I'm using this as a marker, but we don't necessarily rely on this. So if we get into charts, Phil, I'm going to show you. And what I did for you guys for the charts is these are weekly right now, just to give you some perspective. We normally trade, on the 4 hour, at least that's how I do on the miners. And just to explain the charts for people, for those who have been watching for a while, the worm, people should know what the worm is now. People should know what the ranger is. But one thing I threw up there too, this is also part of the advanced package, is I actually turned on the pivot fill just to show people so they can kind of visualize the up moves and down moves a little bit better. And this has a low lag, by the way, too, guys. So if you guys use the advanced indicator and you're afraid of every other indicator that we have, the pivot algorithm has a low lag, low latency, which means that it will react to price fairly quickly, and you can actually even trade off of that. We really like it. So the first thing I want to do is Mara. Okay, so Mara right now on a weekly price is above the Ranger fill, and we're in what I would call a sell consolidation right now, and no need to worry. Well, and this is weekly too, so I mean you get a big move here, but you really just don't really worry about the price action if you're holding it long term unless that Ranger flips. But right now if you're holding it, it's pushing down at the moment. So Mara's kind of neutral. It had a blow off, it had a double top and failed, and so I'm expecting this thing to come all the way back down to that blue bar fill and see if we get a positive reaction from that move. If not, Mara's in big trouble. And if we look at our chart, Mara is going to require Bitcoin to be at a very elevated rate for a period of time for them to be a profitable entity. So I would have this one as a caution flag at the moment, post-halving. So the next one is Riot. Riot looks like Mara, but a little bit weaker. And Riot is financial performance on the fundamentals even worse. Again, the same thing. I would be buying it here. I'd wait for the worm to turn and the pivot to turn and see what kind of reaction they get into the halving. But if these guys don't get positive reactions from the halving fill, I think they're going to roll down as well. And you can see Riot down in single digits again, back down to those lows that you can see here on the left side of the chart. That is absolutely a realistic possibility for Riot. Next one is Hut. Hut's another one that's going to struggle, and it is already struggling. So it broke its Ranger. It's been selling. It's getting these episodic moves like they did. I think the pre-halving move on these weakest companies, Phil, happened last month, and now they've been struggling. Right now, Hut's trying to get a little bit of a push here on the worm. Any failure here, Hut's going to go down even further. I wouldn't be interested in Hut at all. Next chart is BTBT. BT looks like Mara and Riot is holding above its Ranger. It's trying to maintain this consolidation area. I'm neutral on BTBT. I wouldn't hold it long term, and I think it's going to flip the Ranger too, Phil, when post halving happens, and especially if we get market sell off. These stocks are going to be in big trouble. Next chart here is this one that you should be accumulating, and smart people have been. People should have been buying this thing. If you notice, for the last almost 2 years here, CLSK has been in a accumulation mode, and I think right now it's in consolidation on a weekly, and I would let this dip occur, and then I would be a buyer on this thing anytime the worm turns back up here post halving. CLSK should be in your long-term portfolio. And then we got the werewolf. This one I trade quite a bit. It's underneath the Ranger, and I think this is what Phil's talking about, a stock being pretty cheap. So this is the one here. I know, Phil, I'll let you speak to that price that you're looking to try to capture, but from my standpoint here is you want to see it break that Ranger or pull back and buy the next dip and just trade this thing counter trade until it breaks this one. But I think CleanSpark and Wolf are the two that you want to own long term, and I think that was the last chart I had, Phil.
Wolf, I think out of all of these, kind of, to me, seems the most appetizing. And I think, if you look at today's or this week's price action, if you get anywhere near, here or lower toward that lower wick, or, if Bitcoin decides to, I know Bitcoin bounced, we were looking for that to happen, right? We talked about that yesterday. But if Bitcoin puts in a lower high and rolls over one last time to kind of finish off the consolidation, you might get one more push down on Wolf. But anywhere between 2 and 250, I think, is really fair for what we would anticipate to be a push up into the halving on that. So yeah, I like the setup on Wolf a lot here.
Yeah, and Wolf, the nice thing about Wolf, when it moves, it accelerates. So you can, even if you're just trading, you're not trying to hold it, I've had a couple doubles on Wolf trading it, and I'm sitting back and waiting too. I know you have a price area around $2 or 205 that you jump on in a heartbeat. I'm just simply now waiting for the halving to play itself out, and I'll get aggressive above the Ranger, and I'll be trading it on buy signals on the 4-hour on any turn of the worm until it flips this weekly Ranger. And then I think you're going to see, Wolf. Remember, if Bitcoin gets over 100,000, Wolf's probably going to go to $6 or $7 here, Phil. I think. So
I think it could go quite a bit higher.
Yeah, there's a double, triple. Yeah, you're probably right, even more so. But you don't have to get ahead of yourself. But look, if you want to make sure you have something, I would put a little bit in the cookie jar right now, so you always have a position, because you never know when this thing's just going to pop and rocket. Because we don't know. We can wake up one weekend and Bitcoin can go from 70 to 100,000. We've seen those kind of moves in the past with Bitcoin. You don't know what's going on in the world right now, and so you don't want to be left with nothing. So you end up FOMOing it and getting caught. So if you want to start building position, I think you're probably in good shape here with both CleanSpark and Wolf. And that's all we have. We're going to back to some macro tomorrow. There's some incredibly scary things happening on the economic front. The market's probably short-term overbought here. There's going to be a fight. April is usually a big month up, but we've already had a big 3 months up. Are we having a bit of a fight here? Phil says 4th year of a presidential. April's not always bullish, and we may push down and catch the May move instead. So keep an eye on that, and we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. Let us know what you think. If we missed a chart, let us know. We'll throw it up out there, maybe throw it in the comments. But I think you guys get the gist. Always buy the low-cost producer in a commodity environment like this, and you can't go wrong.
All right, guys, well, let us know what you think on our presentation today. Leave the comments below, as always. And if you're interested in our stuff, head over to tradegenius.co. We would love to see you guys in the room. We'll see you guys on the next video. Take care. Have a good one.
Trade Genius.